You are now entering the Thick Goddess Energy Morning Show. We in the building. High priestess in the building, didn't let my fears kill me. Transmuted my pain in that cleanse in the rain. Found out I was working and I conquered my demons. I accepted my purpose and the goddess I became. All right, we are live. So good morning. Today is technically December 15th is technically the day today that this is airing on. So good morning, you guys, and thank you for coming and watching Thick Goddess Energy Morning Show. Sponsored by, I always forget, like, where the hell are we sponsored? Right now, we're sponsored by Divine Goddess Healers and Readings.com, where your questions get answered. And I am your host, Divine Moon Goddess. My co-host, Oracle Empress, and today's special guest, we have Jamie Farid. I probably am messing it up, right?
Yep. No? Everybody says Farid, Farid, whatever. It's all good.
I felt like it's probably a little bit different, but I was going to mess it up anyway. So I was just like, okay,
you're good. No, you're good. Hi.
So, good morning, you guys. We have an interesting show for you guys this morning. We're going to get into some more spirituality talk this morning with Jamie and her path. A little bit of it, right? Because we'll be here forever talking about the whole path.
Oh, yes.
But we're going to get into a part of it because, this path gets very real and we get asked a lot of questions from people coming in, and we see a lot of people who come in very confused. I mean, the very big part of spirituality is confusion and fucking craziness, right? What we call craziness, right? Because it's so unknown. We all know we can go there, right? So one of the things I wanted to start with this path of course, tell us about you, your path, where you're at, but I do want to go into your perception of coming in, of maybe what you thought was going to happen, and then we'll go into what the reality is.
Okay. So you want me to start with the perception and the reality?
Yeah.
So the perception coming in, I realized that I was growing up in a very religious environment. I was always one that was thought outside the box and argued. I grew up Catholic, and then changed to non-denominational, and just something didn't feel right. And then after my mom passed away, I was in grief groups. And I found myself somehow in a spiritual grief group. I don't know how I ended up in a particular just spirituality grief group. Right. That was, and then they had a religious one. So the spirituality grief group, somebody approached me, a member there, and said, the way that you talk and the way that you post seems like you're more, I don't know what your beliefs are, but I have a group. I just want you to see if this is something that resonates with you. So I joined the group, and I was just like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is like, it's more of like, it's not the structured environment and the learning and the way of living that I grew up. I'm sorry if you hear helicopters. I'm near Fort outside.
I don't know.
Okay, good. So, and here I am in this group, and it's like, wait, this is not like the way I grew up. I'm like, so there's more, and finally realizing that there's more to it, that I don't have to follow a certain way of believing, and I can have my own beliefs that don't match any other person, and it doesn't make me wrong or right. And so this gentleman, it's great. He introduced me to other people in the group. That's how I started meditation, grounding, all that stuff. And It's funny because I've encountered a few people that have told me this. One being a lady today from work, who I introduced her to meditation. I got addicted to meditation. I was just like, I could not, it was just, I would literally do one after the other.
Mhm.
And I got addicted to my vibration and my frequency being so high, and just this pure peace and this pure, like, it's almost like you're floating,
Mhm.
constantly floating. And I remember I was starting to build, a little circle of friends. And in one of the meditations, I unintentionally astral traveled. And, so it was a lot was coming up, but a lot of it felt good. However,
You never hear wait, I just gotta go back because you never hear anyone say, "I got addicted to meditation," right?
oh
Like,
my
people don't
goodness.
ever hear that. Like, no one ever was just like, "Yeah, I just in" now I do believe in meditation. Meditation has become a way of life for me just because I do believe in it and I know how it's helped me, but you just don't hear that like,
Oh, yeah.
this nirvana, but go ahead, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. I don't hear it, that much, because you hear people say, "I just don't have that much time to meditate,"
Right,
and you really don't. All you need is 5 minutes, and you don't have to listen. You could do your breath work. Like, people think that it's this whole, like, you have to put together this big thing, when it's really just lifting your vibration. But and I always say, and I'm sure you all would agree, starting off with guided meditation and learning how to do the breath work while, like, they're guiding you how to breathe, helps ego step aside.
mm,
And then when ego steps aside, you are just like, what is this? Like, I am not thinking, like, oh, the fear, the anxiety, the everything that, we are used to feeling, even like starting off meditation, not knowing what I'm going to feel like, one
right.
just went away, and I just went with the flow. And so I was told by a few people in the group, the gentleman, and it's his group, and the lady, she's a moderator. Um, my awakening, they said, was probably one of the quickest ones that they've ever experienced or
Mm,
seen somebody go through. And because it went from complete bliss and just like, oh my God, I don't want this to stop. I don't want to go to work. I just want to do this 24 hours a day, And then all of a sudden, like,
the reality?
Kundalini, a month later, Kundalini awakening is happening. And
Mm,
they were just like, and that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into right now, because that could take forever. And healing stuff starts coming up for healing. And dark night of the soul, my first dark night of the soul within the first month. And I am just like, I am losing my freaking mind. Excuse my
mm.
French. I'm definitely not going to use.
Curse here, as you see the parental advisory, we do curse on on
Okay, good, good. Because okay, I was gonna ask you about that.
one of the
Good.
things I just wanted to backtrack because the reason why I asked is because so many of us, right, we come in and I think a lot of people paint the picture of we always joke with the kumbaya around the fireplace, right? The kumbaya around the fireplace picture of spirituality. But then it goes to a very dark space because
It
of
does.
some of the shit that
It does.
comes up in your own
It
psyche,
does.
your own
Yes.
healing, and your own shit. And so your path from being very blissful, very peaceful, turned all the way around and took you down a very dark path into some very depressive states, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just, I think a lot of us don't realize, because this is something that this year I've only realized. My spiritual awakening actually started 15 years ago, and I had no idea. I had no idea, because I had a great job. I had a great place. I was getting paid really well. I was in a great relationship. So usually when you're suppressing stuff
Mm-hmm.
and you're just not ready to deal with it, when you get in a place where you're more comfortable and your mind realizes, okay, you don't have to, you're making enough money, so you're not worried about money. You have your own place, so you're not worried about this. Time for stuff to come up, for healing. And this was probably, I want to say, like, actually, it's more, what am I saying, 15 years ago? Oh, yeah, it's like 20 years ago. Um, and I was almost 20 years. Yeah, it was actually, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I was in my mid 20s. I'm 43 right now. So um, I started going to therapy and going with the therapy. I was going twice a week. Things were coming up from my childhood, things that I didn't remember, but things that I also went through and had caused
Mm-hmm.
a lot of trauma. And I also started seeing a psychiatrist. So I was diagnosed as bipolar. I was diagnosed as like, I was, yeah, bipolar, depressive, and having what is it? Not just anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay.
And so I was put on 7 different medications. And it got to the point that it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. I
Okay.
was hospitalized for 3 days. I finally, my psychiatrist, and I did electric shock therapy. That's how far I went because there was so much, everything was coming up, everything at the same time. Luckily, my therapist is more on the spiritual end. Um, and so she ended up firing me as a patient because she couldn't cure me. She couldn't cure me. So that always stuck with me, but I never put two and two together until this year. So
Mm-hmm.
it had started back then, but then shortly after that, my mom got sick, and she was sick for years. So taking care of her, everything took, on the back burner while
Mm-hmm.
taking care of my mom. And then after she passed away, the first 2 years of grief, of course, are difficult. And then after that, that's when my spirituality, started. And so going back to where I was, a month after I had really started opening up, I crashed. I crashed in ways. I was on my knees, begging, crying, like what I felt like my soul was coming out of me. Like literally somebody was pulling my soul. Like I felt nothing but darkness. I wanted, either I couldn't sleep or all I did was sleep. It went back and forth. And at the time, I was going through family issues. Um, it's not unusual where grief causes family stuff to come up.
Right.
And uh, so I started paying attention to my dreams, what they were coming up as. Because a lot of our dreams speak to us. Our dreams, when we cannot think clearly, and a lot of our healing does happen when we're sleeping, but our guides, our, ancestors, our archangels, they speak to us in our dream when we can't think clearly. And I kept having thoughts about like my family issues, um, not just the current ones, also going back, that it was time for me to put them to rest. That it was, they had taken up enough of my energy. And this is not, holding on to anger and holding on to just like not being happy, just being like the blame thing. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to be done with it. Um, so I started doing that. Um, I didn't know where to go as far when it came to healing, like to who to talk to. Because again, this is just like a little bit over a month. And everybody that I spoke to, just to give advice, would be like, oh, I need to charge you this, I need to charge you that. It's one thing if you're a healer. I've worked with great healers. You know one of them very well. I do not mind, and I'm all for investing with when it comes to that. But telling me what, like, I didn't even know what shadow work was. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that like healing required. I'm sorry, spirituality required healing.
Right, right.
So when I started working on the family stuff that was coming up in my dreams, then slowly I started to come down from that dark place. Um, and I got back into it, and I got back into it in a way where I was like, okay, I need to create a group, which I used to have a group for ladies who were awakening. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't me like guiding anyone, it was an open form of place where I had people who were just awakening
Right.
and people who were like, have been on this path for a while that had joined. And it was just to provide guidance on the things that I couldn't find guidance on. So, from there, it was a roller coaster, and I can answer whatever you want me to answer
Well,
about
what
the
I was
roller
going to
coaster.
say, my thoughts on this, the term spiritual awakening have changed. And we just talked about this on a show
Mm,
this
I
week
would love to.
because I don't believe we have a spiritual awakening. I believe we
Right.
go through parts of a journey. And so
Absolutely.
I said I was going to start rephrasing that term because I do feel like coming into this, everyone talks about this awakening because you have this huge moment. And what I find is most of us come into spirituality after a huge grief moment, some type of
Mm-hmm.
death, some type of major shocking event that we detach from the norm because we no longer believe in what society says, but that it stems so many people on this path. It's normally stems from something like that. We all have that in common, right? But the spiritual awakening, I kind of see it differently. So you go through all of these pieces that kind of lead us up. We all have this past of just paranormal, whatever, that's always been there, some way, shape or form. So you get to this point where you kind of just lose it. So what I want to touch is that because some of these terms people don't know, shadow work and dark night of the soul, and what is that? Because of course everyone's process is different, but
Absolutely.
when you're
Ab-
gonna when we're sitting here and we're talking about it, and it's like the same thing as when you're trying to find information and someone's like, oh yeah, I gotta charge you to tell you what's wrong with you instead of just, can I get some information, like what the hell. Now again, we do tarot, so I do get it with tarot to get answers, but not every tarot reader is going to give you answers
oh no.
on some of this shit, right? It's just they don't have it, they don't have that type of background or training, right? We
Right.
won't go, that's a whole nother topic. But
Exactly.
so what is some of the first major dips back into, I wouldn't say back into, but what are some of the major things that kind of went left for you in this path when you're talking about dark night of the soul? And what is that like? Because just to say it, it doesn't even give it justice, right? Of what it truly
Absolutely. No, it
feels
definitely
like.
does not.
It's this very
It
low place that you can
it
go.
definitely doesn't. I just want to touch on something. I really like the fact that you said there is not, it's not an awakening. And there was another thing that I was actually, I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of people, one of the things, and it's not that it's the wrong word, but a lot of people are like, oh, well, you were lost. But we're never lost to be found. And just like the spiritual awakening, it's not like, it is stepping into our truth. It is remembering who we are, because this is something that we agree to, and that we, before we reincarnated, and once we came back, and We forget, of course, as we grow older, and we go with what society says is right. So you're right. It's not an awakening. It is remembering who we truly are. Remembering, like, our connecting with our higher self. Remembering as a soul who we are, because we're all spirit having a human experience. It's the human experience that makes us forget. So yeah, that's a great point. Dark Night of the Soul is basically, so a lot of people, um, some people equate Dark Night of the Soul and ego death to be the same thing.
Right.
And I'm not saying, to me, I would never ever tell somebody you're right, or I'm sorry, you're wrong and I'm right.
Hmm.
Um, People, yeah, if that's the way you want to think it, to me, they're two different things, and I've experienced them both. An ego death is where we are slowly shedding parts of our ego that no longer align with our truth and who what we are trying to become. Dark Night of the Soul to me is more about healing. Ego, like healing the stuff, the trauma that you've been through, the forgiveness that you need to do, the shadow work, and I'm going to touch base on that.
Hmm.
Ego death is more of who you are that is not aligned with the vibration and frequency of love, and getting rid of it slowly, slowly. Another thing that I disagree with people, and I've seen people post about it, is when you get rid of ego, that's when you truly become enlightened. Well, to me, you don't get rid of ego until you die.
I
You
don't.
don't.
I don't agree
Ego
with I
stays.
don't agree with that either. I think a lot of spiritualists go, when they say ego death, people think like you're really going to get rid of this part of you, but it's actually a piece of you in this life. And I totally agree with that, where you can't get rid of ego. It's about managing your ego, because, and we're going to
Exactly.
touch on this point because we've made this point on this show quite a lot. We're getting people to understand there's no light without dark. It
Oh no.
coexists. And for the people in this path that's just sitting there all light is bullshit to me. Like I
Ex-
just got to call that. It's bullshit to me to say that we're all light and there's no dark, when we know that we all can get to that very dark space very quickly. If something is to happen in our life that triggers that, we all can
mhm.
get there. So I don't feel like we ever go through a true ego death where your ego's not there, but I do feel like we can get to a point to manage our ego. And
Absolutely.
one other thing is, like, when just hearing you talk about it, this is one of the points that I make is coming into here, because when we say this, people think when you say ego, what do people always think? Oh, I'm not
Bad thing.
egotistical.
It's a bad thing. Yeah.
I don't have an
It's not a
ego.
bad thing. No, ego is actually good for us. When you get to the point to understand how good ego is for you, your our ego triggers us, shows us what we need to work on. It's when you let it control your life when it's not good for you. That's,
Mhm.
yes. The ego, just like you said, yin and yang, dark and light. We have to learn how to embrace all of us, and that is in all of us.
Right, right.
And yes, you're right. This uh what do I call I have a term for it. The spiritual, like, constantly being positive. I forget the term that I use. It's not, it's so unhealthy. It is
Right, right.
so bad
It's
because
unrealistic one. It's unrealistic. I think it sets a lot of people up for failure. One, the way that we're coming in here, most of us are not doing well anyway, right? You get a split second of happiness and then you come crashing down, which we've kind of all experienced this, even myself. I've gone through where I've had to pick myself up off the floor also and feeling like shit in this path. And it's been
mhm,
very rough. It has not been all fucking rainbows and butterflies. And I always want to bring that to the table, because I think that is something that people forget or don't want to talk about or are scared to talk about the reality of it. But I think we do a disservice by not talking about it. Because just like Dark Night of the Soul, for me, in my experience, for me, and I know I've heard a lot of people talk about their experience and everybody's different. To me, that is that it was fucking bananas. It's fucking crazy. It's like horrible. I would never even want to go there. I would never even want to experience that. I would never even want to open that door to be like, yeah, let's just go through Dark Night of the Soul.
Oh, I agree with you completely. After going through the first one, and then I think within the first 2 years, I went through four Dark Nights of the Soul, three ego deaths.
Now I'm going to pull it up to see what is the terminology behind it because everyone has their right.
Right. And you'll find, and I've actually done the same thing where I've researched it, and that's where I find that some people, say it's the same thing. To
We're
me,
going to
dark.
talk about it because when we say it, it's like, ooh, Dark Night of the Soul. What is that, right? So, and I'm just looking at one thing that pops up. It's a phrase, it's normally describe an extremely difficult and painful period in one's life. For example, after a death of a loved one, the breakup of a marriage, or a diagnosis of a life threatening illness. And when you look at most dark nights of the soul, it's when you have to come to term. Well, my perception, I'll just say my perception of it, right? I do feel like it's a way of having to come to terms with a lot of things that you've been avoiding.
Absolutely.
So
And I
That's
think the
exactly what
reality
it
of
is.
it,
what do you think the difference is between that and depression?
and I think
A
it's
lot.
I
What
personally
is
think
it
it
though?
ties
Because
together,
that's what I'm correlating there. I've never had one.
right? I have gone
But that's what
through,
I hear is a depression, a
right,
mental breakdown.
and I've struggled with,
Okay, hold on. I gotta go. I gotta go.
uh-huh. And well, I've struggled with depression my whole life. So that's been something that I have just struggled with. These points of depression and things that have been, which I call lay dormant in my soul kind of thing, right?
Right.
And when
Right.
someone says dark night of the soul, when we think dark, we always think bad. And it's not necessarily bad, but it
No.
can be
Yeah.
hurtful. It can be painful to deal with because I do feel like it's a part of us that has been swept underneath the rug and in some shape or form that now we have to deal with. And that's why it hurts. Because otherwise
And
it's
I,
like, why would it be so painful?
well, I also think that the universe, okay, going back to shadow work is, you know, we all know the things that we need to heal, at least some of the stuff, and other stuff starts to come up as you're, working on some, the things that you know about. The universe always triggers us and gives us little nudges. Hey, you need to do shadow work. Shadow work meaning I need to go within, find out why did this bother me? How
To
did it
determine
affect
the
me?
terminology
Exactly.
behind it.
Yeah. Like why did it affect me this way? How is it still affecting my life? How is it affecting my relationships? Have I made peace with it? Have I truly forgiven other people? Have I forgiven myself?
Right.
Journaling is like when it comes to shadow, and that's really what shadow work is going within and just like taking every experience, doing one experience at a time, one trauma at a time, and just saying, I'm going to concentrate on this one, and getting to a place where you finally find peace with it.
Right.
Now, is
Right.
it
Right.
ever going to come up again? Yeah, I'm sure it will, because there's probably a little piece, little pieces that you didn't completely heal from, and that's
Right.
okay. That's okay. But when the universe gives us nudges to do shadow work and we keep ignoring them and saying, hey, now like you need to work on yourself. You need
Right.
to
Right.
heal. You need to like there's some stuff that you need to work on. And we keep ignoring, then all of a sudden that's when Dark Night of Soul hits. It
Right.
is
I've
a
I've kind of changed my
compilation of
I've kind of changed my perception on the term shadow work a lot. Just from working, and then I had, I have a shadow work class, and just working with it and kind of looking into it a little bit more. And I do believe it can be used for trauma, but what I've noticed is that with shadow work, it's like the same thing as we would say the ego death. It's getting familiar and also loving the parts that we hate about us. And not all of that comes from trauma. And
no.
I think a lot of people go straight to trauma with shadow work. It's like, oh, you have to heal. And some people are like, I don't have nothing. And what I've realized, what people call trauma to one person, which who got raped or molested, the other person's
Yes,
trauma could be a car accident when they were a child,
right. You're so right.
you
You're
know?
absolutely right about that.
And I
Yes,
think people
completely.
don't explain this shit correctly. We just throw these terms out, right? We just hear
Yes.
these terms and shadow work and this, that, and the third. And it's like, and then you go down the rabbit hole of Google.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, that's probably the worst place. And you know, and if there's one advice that I can give somebody who is just starting on their spiritual path is do not go to Google. Whatever you do, seriously, do not. Find the right books. Listen to podcasts. There are plenty
Right,
out there.
right,
Like, listen to people who have been through this, not just like, because a lot of these Google articles are, and I don't want it to sound like it's a bad thing, medically, like psychologically, when it comes to medicine,
right,
like produced. And not that there's anything wrong with medicine, but I also do believe that a lot of people who suffer from low self-esteem, depression, um, or have been diagnosed with so many mental illnesses. It's
right, right, right,
actually that they have not worked on themselves. It's not working on self-worth. It's not working on self-love, and this is something that I learned through experience.
right, right,
Um, so yes, I agree. It does not, shadow work does not always have, absolutely doesn't have to be about trauma. And shadow work and my dark nights of the soul at the beginning, they were long. They
mhm,
could, like, I had the first two lasted me 2 months.
yeah,
And, but now, like, I could just be like, okay, shadow work, I need to work on this. Something triggered me. Something happened. That means there is something in there that I need to explore more.
right,
And it could be just like the way a coworker speaks to me, or it could be, the way a sibling, like, makes fun of something that's supposed to be a joke, but all of a
right,
sudden it's like taking me back.
right, right,
And it doesn't have to be serious. You're right. It doesn't have to be serious stuff. It doesn't always have to be. Not everybody has gone through these horrendous things.
right, right, right. Yeah, I've
So
noticed
yeah,
that.
I agree.
And I think I think the terminology is a big part because you come in with no knowledge or very little knowledge of these terms. And then I think it just is like, what am I, what is this? What am I experiencing? So you go through these moments, right? And they get pretty rough. And then you even part of the we talked about this, of even to where you were living out your car in one moment, of actually getting to this point of the lowest you can
So
get, right?
yeah, so fast forward, because this is, I mean, I've been on, really been on this path. Going on five, yeah, 4.5, almost 5 years, I want to say. And here's the thing. I am not going to bullshit anybody. When you decide that you are going to live your authentic, like, step into your truth, your authentic life, when you make that decision, that society and the people who I grew up with, and what we see on the TV, uh, doesn't define who I am, and I get to decide what kind of person I want to be. Um, the spiritual journey is like the Wheel of Fortune card.
Hmm.
When you're up, you better enjoy that up, because
Right.
guess what? The down is coming. And when you're down, remember, you're never going to stay down. You're going to go back up. And
So,
once we come to terms with it,
mhm. I want to get
It
a little bit
make
more descriptive of what like the downs are, because I think like we could say when you're up, you're feeling good. You've talked about that, the blissful,
yeah.
peaceful, but what exactly is the down? What are we struggling with in the down part of it when we sink, right?
I think, I can speak for myself, and I'm sure you agree. It depends from person to person, but it could go from um, sleeping constantly because you don't want to be awake,
Hmm.
because your heart feels like it's being ripped out of your chest, basically. And then when you're sleeping, you're having nightmares. You're waking up in sweat, and you're constantly crying. The crying, the purging. Oh,
What
good
we call the
gosh.
famous purge.
Oh, good God. I've done so much purging. And you know what? I've finally gotten to the point where I actually welcome it,
Mhm.
because I know how good later I'm going to feel. Holding it in is something, or trying to avoid it is something that I used to do at the
Yeah.
beginning. Um, Now I don't. Purging, also, like getting angry with just any little thing. Road rage, I did experience it. People would annoy me for no reason whatsoever.
Hmm.
Like, I was just, the lows are just, it's miserable. It's like you are grasping. It's kind of like you're being pulled down. You're in an ocean, you're being pulled down, and you're trying to just come up for air. That's
Hmm.
all you want. You just want a little air to breathe, but you're being suffocated, and like you're coming back down. Um, it's horrendous, especially, I'm not gonna lie, like especially your first one.
Hmm.
And especially when you don't have any, like, you haven't, nobody's told you about it, you haven't heard anything about it, and then all of a sudden you go from that, like being good, to boom, you're crashing and you're experiencing all of this, and you still have to function in the real world. That's the hardest part about
Right,
it, is
right, right.
that you're going through all these emotions. You're not sleeping, or you're sleeping too much. You're not eating, oh my gosh, or you're eating too much,
Hmm.
like, you know and you're purging. You're constantly purging. You're lonely. You're alone, because that's what a spiritual, when you start on your spiritual path, you people are going to start falling off out of your life, and you start to think that there's something wrong with me. No, it's because they are not understanding what's changing in you. Your frequency is changing, so therefore they're leaving your life, and that's actually a blessing.
Hmm.
And people start to think, oh, there's something wrong. And the loneliness, the wanting to talk to somebody. I don't want you to solve my problems, but I just want somebody to hear me out.
Right, right, right.
So, yeah,
I
yeah,
think I
that's
think
it.
the I think some parts of this is when, of course, you're going through this of because people you're coming from, most people are coming from, majority of people are religious, or they still have those ties to those backgrounds. And when you start walking into any type of spiritual path and you're like renouncing God, or however, you come into this path, most of us, right? People kind of push back from that, like, I don't know, that's crazy. What are you over here doing? And so you start to be labeled crazy. Most people
Yeah.
start to be labeled crazy, and then there is
Oh,
kind
yes.
of alienation away from what you
Mm-hmm.
used to know.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the feeling alone, feeling like you have no one. So going through this and purging, and when we talk you guys, everyone's path is different. I have not gone through the same things, of course, if Jamie Oracle's gone through her own experiences. Everyone's unique. They kind of,
Yeah.
there's all these terms and trying to label things, of course, because we got to label everything, but everyone's path is a little bit different. But so when you got to the point of like bottom out, losing it all, how do you pick yourself back up off of the floor to come back. Because when you get to a point of losing everything, right, you're like, what the fuck, do I even want to be in this path anymore? Why do I even want to be
Oh
here?
yeah.
When you're
Oh
when you
yeah.
feel like you've lost anything, everything, it's like, why do I even want to come back? What made you decide? Because I want to talk about too, because awakening in ascension facilitator, what made you say, I do want to come back, this is something that I do want to pursue, with all the hardship, with all the heartache, with all the shit show that you went through, picking yourself back up and coming back? What made you decide, I do want to be on board?
Yeah, yeah. I've asked myself that question so many times at the beginning, like, what am I thinking? What am I'm losing everything that I, know the life that I've known. But when you go through all of that stuff physically, emotionally, mentally, you get to a point where you have nothing but to surrender because you just don't have it in you to fight whatever is to fight this dark night of the soul, to go against it, or to fight the healing or that needs to be done. So for me, it was just I got to the point where I was just like literally got on my knees and I was like, all right, you know what? You win. God, spirit, universe, whatever term you people like to use. You win. Let's do it your way. I'm not fighting anymore. Let's do this your way. I am waiting for your guidance. And you do people. If there's one thing of advice that I can tell people, if people are going through this, and I'm the kind of person, yeah, I mentioned in my bio, I look at spirituality as an umbrella. Certain people like to say, okay, I just like to work with, let's say, archangels, or I'm just a medium, I'm just a channeler, I'm just a witch, I'm just this, I'm just shamanism. No, I'm all of that. I love it. I'm like, let me learn more, 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 because I think tying it in all together is what's made it so amazing. So I got on my knees, angels, spirit guides, whoever's out there that's for, love and light. My mom is one of my guides. And I finally said, help me. I said, I know that this is not something that you can take away. This is something that I need to experience. Give me the strength to get through this. Give me the strength to get through this and show me be okay. And when you get to that point of surrender,
Mhm.
and when you actually, because of free will, whether it's our guides or angels or whoever you ask for assistance, they're not going to step in unless you call on them. But once you call on them, boom, it's like they are right there, front and center, and you feel that energy, you feel that love that surrounds you. You feel it literally, like I would feel it. I was like, oh my goodness, who's hugging me? Who's like, and
I was gonna say, what was the
um
sign that you got from them? Like, okay, this is the sign I asked for.
and for me it was just like when I surrendered, that's the night that I started I was laying in bed and I was just like, God, I surrender. And I was like, I had just cried my eyes out. I couldn't cry anymore. They were so swollen. I was so tired. And then I was just like, I'm just gonna close it, but I wasn't sleeping. And then all of a sudden, I said, like yeah, you mentioned, I said, show me a sign. Show me that I'm gonna be okay. I
Mhm.
closed my eyes and I felt, first of all, like an animal get on my bed. And I was just like, well, that's weird. And I was like, I don't know if I want to open my eyes now. Like, I don't know if I've lost it completely and I'm imagining things, or what's going on.
Right, right.
But immediately, the very first thing, I don't know why it came to my mind, was a wolf.
Mhm.
And that is, that's like my number one spirit animal is the lone wolf. That's me, But I felt the animal get on my bed, and I don't know why my mind went to wolf immediately. And then I felt 2 feet get on my bed, and it was just like I just felt a pouring of just like love and just um energy, like tingling sensation, a happy tingling sensation. And somebody like kind of like healing touch my heart and just hold it, and just like all the hurt started to subside, and I was like, and I was able to breathe. I wasn't, like I was gasping for before, and it wasn't like that. And I was just like, I knew it was an angel. And because at that point, immediately when they tell you, they tell you to always like see the archangel, that if you're people who are into archangels, which one you resonate with the most. Michael is the one that most people resonate with. He's the one that I've worked with the most. However, since then, I resonate with other ones too, just as much. Um, I didn't know. I mean, of course, I didn't open my eyes, but I knew that was Archangel Michael that also stepped on my bed. So there was a wolf and there was Archangel Michael. And then I felt the wolf was giving me the strength. And Archangel Michael was kind of wrapping me with the orb of light and just protecting me from the negativity that I am actually bringing onto myself because my frequency was so low. It's not coming from anywhere but from within. My fear, my anxiety was producing more fear and anxiety. So Archangel Michael wrapped me with a white orb of light. And then all of a sudden I fell asleep, and it was the most blissful sleep. I, I hadn't experienced that in, a couple weeks before that. And then when I woke up, there was still, of course, it's not like boom, like, okay, you're done.
Right,
There
right,
was
right.
residual pain. There was residual, but then I realized it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This is when you hit that point, this is rock bottom, and this is where you're going to start going up. You
Right.
mentioned something earlier, which I want to touch base on. Um, So this all happened like 4 years ago, and I've gone through quite a few transformations,
Mm-hmm.
which you get to a point where you realize transformations are the best things. They are the hardest things, but they are the best things that could happen to you spiritually.
Right, right.
Um, Last year, 2020 was not an easy year for most of us, and not being able to work. Having a job before everything started, that I basically I was on unemployment, and as they're trying to figure that out, each state that you live in has different laws. uh I was living with roommates that one of them, she triggered me. She was so miserable. She triggered me. And one of my spiritual friends, who is a very good friend of mine, very, very good friend, because I want to say that ahead of time before I go into the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, she, uh, she had seen me go through like, the bad roommate, like the not knowing where the income is going to come in from and all that stuff. So she invited me to come stay with her. And we were both very close spiritually. Um, Things were starting to open up, but we were still in the winter. It was, holiday season, and it's right after holiday season is when it really hit rock bottom. Uh, it was there was a flu going on, so so like it was just like everything started to shut down again because people were just like everybody was living in fear. They didn't know what do I have? What do I have to do? So jobs weren't again, they weren't available. So I was going through my own transformation, a big transformation that I didn't realize at the time. I was, it was starting,
Mm-hmm.
going through her own spiritual transformation. Um, and it was too much for us. But came from the universe. This came from spirit because what I needed to work on required me to hit a bottom I have never in my life hit before. And I have hit rock bottom. But
Mm-hmm.
that is, I can honestly say, like, I don't know how you go any lower than that. So, I mean, I'm sure you can, but
I've been homeless
and
before. So I've been homeless
yeah,
and I've lived out of my car before, way before my spiritual path. So I've had quite a few tower moments, what we would call the tower moment, right? I've had quite a few. We still didn't get the picture of what spirit was trying to tell me, but it's all good.
yeah, exactly. I mean, but for me, like spiritually, I couldn't understand. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I am trying to do the work. What?" And so she was, because of the transformation that she was going through, which was different than mine. She was going through her own dark night of the soul, and stuff. And she decided that she doesn't want me there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I fear and anxiety and everything, all that emotions and negative emotions that make our frequency dip, all of a sudden came up, and I just went into like coping mode. Okay, I got to get make sure that this is taken care of. This is taken care of. And I have siblings that I could have immediately called and told them, listen, I need to, leave, and I need to come stay with you. But Spirit was speaking to me and said, now you need to experience homelessness. You need to. And at this point, honestly, I mentioned I'm a channeler. I channel, mostly archangels. And when I do mediumship, I do our loved ones who have passed away. A lot of times will come through. Um, I've God and I sit and talk and chat and all the time, and um, but literally, I heard you need to experience this, and I didn't even question it. So I decided not to call my siblings. Made sure that my stuff was out of there, and slept in my car in January. It was in the cold in January. Slept in my car 4 times. I'm sorry, yeah, 4 days and 4 nights. Um, and I just prepared myself, honestly, like blankets, everything, like, and I again purged, and I was like, all right, I'm doing what you asked me to do. I allowed myself, I didn't call family. Here I am by myself. Here I am, like it is freezing outside. I am covered up in blankets. Show me what it is. What's the purpose of this? Because everything is a learning. When we start to take challenges as learning experiences, God doesn't punish us. There is no such thing as punishment. It is either a learning experience, or if it's something that you want, that you're being directed away from, it's because it's for your highest good. So when people start telling me, and I was there before, I've said it so many times, Why am I being punished? That's because I'm punishing
Why me?
myself, you know?
Right, 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 right.
I'm punishing myself. Nobody punishes us. We create our own reality. We create our own life. So if you are feeling that you're being punished, it's your doing. That's the way my views on it are. Because the source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, God wants nothing but our happiness for us. Wants nothing but for us to, like, of course, align with the love frequency. But if it's for our highest good, why would God not want us to, manifest it and bring it into our life? No, well, we didn't do anything wrong. All the stuff that we grew up learning, the sin stuff, this, like, oh, 10 Commandments and all of that stuff. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Like, okay, yes, there are things that are morally, like, wrong. They're just wrong as a person. I'm not telling you, like, thou shall not kill is okay. Don't go out and do that because that's not something,
You know,
not,
that's
but
where
there
I
are
gotta,
certain
there's certain
things.
things I have to like say because like we will say that like, we know we have this moral compass, but I always like to use this because in the second you have to choose your life over somebody else,
Oh yeah.
we know it's going down. You're going to choose
Oh
your
yeah.
own
Oh yeah.
life.
Oh
And
yeah. No, I'm not.
in that moment, you're like, oh, I'm justifying this shit, because it's my life or yours. I'm going to take your life. Just the same thing. As a mother, I can say, like, there would never be a moment that I wouldn't choose my child over somebody else's life, as harsh as that fucking sounds,
Oh no,
you
no, no.
know,
You're right.
but it's a reality to it. There's a
It
reality to it that I
I
know
completely
that,
agree.
even myself, I don't have a belief system completely because I don't think I'm at a point where I have seen everything or understand everything. I do believe there's something greater than us. And I always say that because I don't know yet. But when we're looking at a lot of these things and we're saying, I understand we want to believe that life is all love in this, but we are a part of some great experiment to some extent, right?
Absolutely. But it's within us. God is us and we are God. The
Hmm.
universe is us and we are the universe. Once we start to accept that, once we start to accept that this is where you came from, um, I've had people get mad at me because of, when I said Jesus is an ascended master. They're like, he's the son of God. I'm like, okay, then I'm the daughter of God too. I'm just, they're like, no, are you equating yourself? No, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to downplay, but Jesus embodied something that we are all trying to get to, which is the Christ consciousness, the complete Christ consciousness, being on that frequency of love. I mean, have you ever heard of anybody else in history that was more forgiving and loving than Jesus? No. And that's why, like, the church, but to
Go
idolize
down a whole
one
rabbit
ascent,
hole of that shit.
yeah,
We could go
what's
down
that?
a whole rabbit hole of that
Oh,
shit
I know. But
because
to
I like to
idolize,
get on people's nerves, and I do it not on purpose, but I love to talk about this shit because I myself, not to say that I'm Jesus, but I don't think that I know what Jesus stands for, and I love the compassion and love and understanding. But I also know that there's no way in hell I would allow someone to fuck me up in that way and me just turn my head. So I don't I don't think that, did he ever do some of the crazy amazing things that he did? I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't vouch for that shit, right? I can't say it. But to say that we're separate from creator, that's where I disagree. I don't believe that there's only this one son of the creator, but we're all connected to this spirit. Like I just don't believe that. I have to
no, and,
disagree
and
on
and
that.
here's the thing. I think that you touched on a really, really good point. I don't think that we will ever get to the point that we will completely make up on our mind as far as on what we believe in exactly, because we are constantly evolving. We are constantly growing, gaining more knowledge. And the deeper that we dive, the more that some of our opinions will change on certain things. And that's not something that's wrong. No, my thing is spirituality, whatever to me is spirituality is whatever makes you a good person to like good person as far as like not always having to be positive, but like generally not somebody that's judging. Generally somebody that's not out there to harm people. That is spirituality. It's not. I don't care what your religious beliefs are. I don't care who you believe in. I don't care who you pray to. I don't care. That's not for me to say. Who am I to judge you and who are you to judge me?
Mm.
You know? I think that's a lot of the things, but that's also we can go in deep into that one.
Gonna say it's kind of hard not to judge. It just is. It just
Mhm.
is. Judgment
You
has
know,
been a big part of my path, and I talk about this a lot on a lot of different shows. And I know we got to cut this one in a moment, but I feel like it's very hard to not judge. It is very hard to not
it's
look at a
ego.
situation, especially when you've never experienced it. Because if you're telling me your experience and I've never felt it for myself, it's very hard for me not to look at my through my eyes and be like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Mm, do I
Well,
really
so
believe
I
this?
know that I don't want to take up on too much time on that then. I definitely want to touch on, hitting the low. So what I realized is the reason that I needed to hit that low and live in my car is because I had such a fear of my life falling apart. I could not trust that the universe will take care of me no matter what. So the universe said, okay,
Okay. Yeah.
let's see what happens and if your life really does fall apart. And it it fell apart. And for those 4 days, yes, that's the lowest I've ever gotten. And then finally I did call my brother and went over to my sisters and they of course in an uproar that I let myself for 4 days but I needed to feel that. I needed to be alone and I needed to experience that yes, the fear that I had of everything falling apart happened. And guess what? I was still okay. And I still lived and I still survived it. And looking at back at it now, this was in January. It feels like it was ages ago because I went to live with my sister jobless, moneyless, everythingless. Within a couple months, I had my own place. I have a job now. I'm just like, once you surrender and you
I was
start
just
to
going to go there
accept,
and ask you, when you say surrender, what does that mean exactly? Because we can say that all day. What does that, and I mean to you, because everyone has their own version of what surrender is, but to you, what did that mean to surrender?
surrendering to me is living in the moment and not thinking about like, oh, worst case scenarios. What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to have food? Am I going to, if I'm searching for a job, am I going to find a job? Am I going to be able to keep my place? If we just concentrate on the current moment and become more mindful and just enjoy because we're freaking out about things that we may not live to see. I could drop that in 10 minutes. And, why? So, surrendering is accepting where I am at this moment and being at peace where I am at this moment and understanding that I am loved because I emit the energy of love. I am safe and everything will be okay because I create my own reality. And if that is what's in my mind and that is what I truly believe, then everything will be okay. And I don't need to even go there.
Right.
So that's what surrendering is to me. It's being more right now and not thinking about like what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I used to
That's
hear that term and I used to be like, surrender to fucking what? Like, what do you mean surrender? What do you mean? And we always say this because, me and Oracle, we always go through this where we're like two girls from the hood. And when you say things like to just be okay, that doesn't work from where we came from. To just be like, now, granted, I have always been okay in my life. I have always, some way, somehow, something has always been, we've always been okay. Even when I was at my
Mhm.
brokest points, my my child ate, I ate. We, even with my family of my parents, we always managed to survive because we learned how to survive. But when you come from a background where that saying to just be okay is not as easy
Mm-mm.
as people think it is. It's not easy. And I'm not saying it
Oh
was
no.
easy for you to surrender, but it is not that easy to just be like, yep, everything's going to be okay. So I'm not going to worry. And it's like,
To me,
Well,
everything's
you're
to me,
absolutely right,
I
and
don't think I would
especially
ever be able to surrender. I think, to me, it's not an option, right? I can live in the moment for things that I know that I cannot change, right? I'm behind,
yeah.
say I'm behind on my electric bill. Okay, shit just didn't happen today. I can't worry about it today. Like
right.
I'll have to worry about it again tomorrow. Things like that. I can surrender to things that I cannot control. Um,
That is a form. Yeah,
I
that is
cannot surrender to things that I feel like I can make better or have control of, and it's not because of myself, because I can easily, allow myself to be homeless or jobless, but I can't because I have mouths to feed, and a lot of them, not just one, not just two, and I don't have family where I can be like, I'm shit out of luck. Can you keep my kids? So to me,
Right,
there's
right,
things that I can't surrender from. I can
right,
surrender to the things that I feel like I can't control. I had a really bad day. My mind is all over the place. Fuck it. I'm going to take a bath. I'm surrendering. I'm not going to try and fight with nobody no more. I'm just going to go to
right.
bed. I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to self love myself. Things like
right.
that I can surrender to, but it's hard to feel like I'm just going to surrender and trust that the universe is going to take care of me, because I've always
Oh,
grown up where the universe will take care of you, but you have to do your part also.
Right, right.
of
You know
course,
what I
yes.
mean?
Oh my
Right.
God,
Because
you
I think
couldn't
that's
have
the
said it
clause
any
that
better.
people don't finish,
Mhm.
right? The clause is the
Yeah.
universe has you, but you got to show up.
Exactly.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
but you're absolutely right. I think, and for me, it was definitely was not easy. But when you have no choice, but that's when that is your only choice left.
Right, right.
You're like, all right, okay, let's try it your way. Let's try it your way. Let's do things your way. I'm used to being more in control, but releasing control is not easy. It's not
Still
easy.
no.
Mm-mm.
And
I'm still not there. And I have embraced this path. I show up and I tell spirit, I show up, I show up every day, but I still have not released full control because my life still sticks with me. I've been in my car, I've been homeless, I have had to make some harsh decisions to put food on that table. So I know how fucking real that shit can get. So it's not as easy to
Hard.
just be like,
yeah.
yeah, just no,
No, it's definitely not. And I don't think it's a and the thing, the other thing, I don't want people to think that everybody has to have it this difficult
right,
and everybody has to have hit this rock bottom.
right,
Each one of our journeys is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
right,
There are plenty of people that will never have to even come close to this. And there are people who have gone through way worse.
right.
And that's something that, nobody's better than we're all equal. You've decided on this before you reincarnated. You decided in this lifetime, this is not gonna be my lessons. So I'm living my lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's basically what it is. And but yeah, there is just to as far as after that, it changed it changed me. This year has been a very transformative year, like I have the most I've ever experienced.
So I know we're at the hour mark, but so what do you do exactly now? Because I know I have you gave me awakening and ascension facilitator. So what for someone who doesn't know what that means, what is that exactly? And then of course, how can people find you should they want to work with you? But what is that? What is when we're saying awakening and ascension facilitator?
So, a- as far as but providing guidance. When I say guidance, it doesn't mean that I'm teaching you the right way. It's I'm telling you what I've experienced, and it's also when people are when they start to when they go on this path and you start to go through ascension, you're going to go through the roller coasters, and there are going to be times when you're just like, fuck it, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, I've been there. And you need somebody. So this is something that I've worked with people with. I'm not gonna, go into like a lot of. I'm building as far as getting in touch with me right now. Best way would be over Messenger, because the website and the everything is coming. The reason I haven't done that is because I'm going through, uh, without going into detail about it, the biggest transformation of my life currently, right now.
Okay.
The biggest transformation of my life that when I was told about it 2 months ago, 2 months ago, I said I went out. I went out of spirituality completely. That's how, I mean, when I say it's a
Right,
roller
right, right.
coaster. So I do work with spirit. I do work with the archangels. I do work. So when I say spiritual and ascension, spiritual awakening, spiritual journey, and ascension facilitator, it's because I do work with the spiritual realm. I work with ascended masters. I work with your ancestors. I work with your loved ones in spirit. I work with the archangels. You know, I can't tell you how many times Archangel Michael and Archangel Metatron, I've just been like so over them and just screaming and yelling and cursing, and they're just sitting there laughing like, hey, you got to experience this. So, um, and I just I take all of that and I allow them to guide me and help me with the people who come to me, as far as what they need to hear, what they need to, what steps might be helpful for them,
Right,
what
right.
practices, what kind of things they should incorporate into their life that may make it easier to be on this journey. Um, Mediumship, channeling. And it's amazing because spirit, the archangel, whoever I'm working with, will never ever say more or show the person more than they are ready to see. Because there are some people who are just not, it's too much for them.
Right,
So
right,
they
right.
won't show them that much. But they will give me little hints. Their loved ones in spirit will tell me things that I don't know, or I'll get names. I'll be like, "Who's this?" And I don't know where it's coming. Obviously, I know where it's coming from, but it's ways to like allow them to open up and accept the um the path that they're on, their new reality, and whatever ways that I can facilitate it for them. Basically, just to sum it up in a way. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are gonna get into the horoscope right now and cut the show. But I want to say thank you for coming up here and
Oh,
just
thank you.
talking, about your path and some of the reality of it, the good and the bad, and some of the shit. One of the biggest things of this show is definitely bringing some real ass conversation about this path, because I know just coming into it there was a lot of fluff, and I just think that we need to get to the hardcore stuff so people can really see a
Yeah.
lot of this shit for what it is, and not just the fluffy rainbows and butterflies, that you may or may not get to, because
Mhm.
there's no fucking guarantee that you will get there. But you know, that kind of thing. I don't know if you have any closing remarks for anyone watching, just some guidance, good to go to remarks for them.
My thing, I think if I had to say anything is, um, love yourself, understand, value yourself. and put yourself first, no matter what. Because if you don't love and if you don't have self love, self worth, then you are no good to anybody else. Not even your own kids, not even your own family, not even that. Work on yourself. Be okay. Let the stuff that needs to come up come up. And always in your heart of hearts, have faith that everything is going to be okay. I've lived it and I'm a testimony of it. Everything, not only will it be okay, it'll probably be way better than you imagine.